I'd like to welcome everyone to this new edition of Strategic Rap Intelligence. Today, I, your host, Robert Lee Taylor, am reading fan mail, and the topic of discussion is with Felicia Martinez in regard to a video that I had posted on YouTube titled My Experience with Music Inner City and Internship with Gordon Curvey. In the 6th episode of Strategic Rap Intelligence, I discussed Music Inner City in Seattle, Washington, and my internship with Gordon Curvey. Felicia Martinez, an associate friend of Gordon Curvey, she writes, "I loved your speech to Gordon. That was straight and honest. I agree totally, 100%. Also, just to add, there are not too many loyal friends anymore, and me being a great judge of character, you and Gordon are good people. And word of advice, people are so fake. I am glad people such as you and Gordon are still out there, and it's always the good people that get shit on." To which I replied, "Thank you for taking notice. I had some good times politicking with Gordon. He still, to this day, has great potential. I hope that one day he sees the light and moves his operations somewhere outside Seattle, like New York, where people truly care about hip-hop. In fact, if you would not mind, I would like to use your quote in a future video." To which Felicia replies, "You know you can." So then I said, "Nice, I have something in mind and will let you know over the course of the next couple of days." Felicia then says, "Yes, please. Keep me updated. I am curious to find out what you're working on." Well, listen, we want to thank Felicia Martinez, thank you Felicia, for being someone who is cognizant of the goings-on of the media, Seattle, true hip-hop, people who have been working in real hip-hop communities since time immemorial. Gordon Curvey is someone who I was listening to when I was, I believe, 12, 13 years old, perhaps even younger. I remember the old Rap Attack back in the day when Sir Mix-a-Lot was making, his first albums around that time, in that circa, rather, and Beepers, Square Dance Rap, Posse on Broadway, Nasty Mix, that whole era back when there was Rap Attack and then there was Sir Mix-a-Lot. Or vice versa, or what have you. That was, so long ago. But a lot of people don't remember any of that. They have no concept or notion thereof. A lot of guys my age, a lot of women my age, they remember Square Dance Rap. They remember it in the high schools. In fact, it was a huge hit because after middle school, when that song was out, and we were totally into the Seattle hip-hop rap sound at the time, which was pretty much Sir Mix-a-Lot and Kid Sensation, obviously, who's now Kid Cola. Well, hey, back then, you didn't have all these different rappers that you have today, or all these so-called rappers. You didn't have any of that. It was Sir Mix-a-Lot, Kid Sensation. But then, later, we went to Seattle and started to establish connections there. We were found and discovered by some producers, a production company out of Seattle from the Central District. Robert Redwine was one of the persons in-house there. Dark Set Productions, Brother Frost Chill, who also went by the name Spade, and Steve Wesley. That was the crew that we got down with in the Central District. They were at a place in Everett called Buzzy's on Broadway. Not too many people remember Buzzy's. Buzzy's was the spot back in the day that was jumping off. It was right there. You'd come in off I-5, you'd take a left, or, come in from 41st Street, and you were there. You were like at the club. It was just a hop, skip, and a jump from Seattle. You're at the club in Everett where you have hip-hop to the north of Seattle, rap to the north of Seattle. Buzzy's was like the spot. I mean, there was Club 4 and some other places. But in terms of north of Seattle, between Canada and Seattle, Washington, the next major hub is Everett, Washington. And that was the spot, man. Buzzy's on Broadway. For a while, it was the place, numero uno. And you had a lot of people come in from different cities up the coast, up and down the coast. People would come in from Tacoma, Bremerton, Vancouver, Portland. And you had Buzzy's in Everett, man. Everybody knew about it. It changed its name so many times, but we remember Buzzy's. And then, unfortunately, over time, it became a hotbed, a hotspot for gangs that had migrated from California. But before that era, you had the era of posses. You had the whole posse thing going on, and which was the prelude, which was the lead-up to the major LA gang migration. But we had a good stretch, man, for hip hop. We had a good run back then. It was a time when everything was pretty much coming of age, like you'd see in the movies. I mean, it was the same thing. It was the real world depiction of that. It was the real world experience of coming of age, and good times, man, fun times. There were fights every once in a while before you had the gang shootings and whatnot, but mostly you had crews battling, MCs, beatboxers that would compete with one another, DJs that would, spin off against one another, have DJ scratch battles and what have you. And Buzzies encompassed some of that. There were a lot of people, a lot of, big names at the time that would come up to Everett and get down with Everett hip-hop, Everett rap scenes, and, who would get down with Everett rap crews and posses. There were some groups back then that were considered to be some of the foremost posses at the time. You had Step 1, ANP, DIE, Deep in Everett, 495. You had 8-7 Inner Circle, Murder 1 Crew, M1, LC, Lethal Crew. There were the Z-Boys. You had a lot of high schools, Mariner High School, south of Everett in Snohomish County. You had, of course, Everett High School, School of the Seagulls, EHS. You had Marysville, Pilchuck, Lake Stevens, Snohomish. So Everett really, since the 1970s, has always been up on the hip-hop scene because it's a major port city north of Seattle. North of Seattle, you got to realize there's only one major city between Seattle and the next country up on the map, which is Canada, and that's Everett, Washington, a.k.a. the EVT. And in many regards and in many respects, we got a lot of hip-hop rap albums before a lot of different places in the United States of America because the transshipment lines are so good going up and down the Pacific coast. There were places in the United States that were landlocked that just weren't getting the stuff from LA that we would get. From LA and Seattle and Oregon, all these places up the coast to Everett, Washington, the EVT is just a hop, skip, and a jump. So, I've got to emphasize that. We got stuff from Seattle, obviously, as soon as it came out. And we got stuff from LA that they didn't get in New York until 10 years later. So, in terms of West Coast rap, Everett, Washington has always been a major factor since day one, since the 1970s when hip-hop first came out. If you're if you're from New York and you're a promoter back in the 1970s, if you're a manufacturer, distributor of music, you're going to send your music to the opposite coast. You're going to say, hey, we did this on the East Coast. Let's mirror this operation and do it again on the West Coast. So we would get the very first imports from overseas as well as what was new coming out of New York City before a lot of other parts of the United States of America. We're the West Coast, or I'm from the West Coast. And so we got a lot of that stuff before a lot of people in America had the opportunity to enjoy it. Seattle and Everett has, for many generations, had a rivalry, but there have also been very strong ties between various organizations, networks, crews, posses, sets, businesses, and such. So, Felicia Martinez, again, is someone who has taken notice, who understands these finer points, who understands how things are structured and organized, and we always like to reward people who have been true to the roots and have always been there as observers and have always been true to this here industry. So again, we thank Felicia Martinez, and if you want for your mail to be read on the air, send us some email, drop us a line, let us know what's on your mind. This has been another episode of Strategic Rap Intelligence. And again, I've been your host for some time now, once Robert Lee Taylor. Check out the new album, the new single. It's out, Clown Moves, Silly Sagging Pants by yours truly.